Breaking news! Things are starting to change behind the scenes at the Los Angeles Rams, and there's a growing sense that the front office isn't done making moves. A recent statement from Les Snead has Rams fans buzzing because, for the first time in a long time, it seems the organization is thinking less about protecting the future and more about maximizing what may be Matthew Stafford's last window of opportunity to win a title. And that changes everything. I'll tell you all the details about it. But first, make sure you've already hit the like button. But only do that if you've been a Rams fan since the 80s. It's great to see fans of all ages. If possible, write, "My heart beats blue and yellow." In recent seasons, the Rams have tried to find a delicate balance between competing now and preparing for life after Stafford. This balance has affected how they handled draft picks, roster building, and even free agency decisions. But now, based on Snead's comments, it seems the Rams finally believe they may have found the solution for the quarterback position in Ty Simpson. That's a huge development, because if the organization truly believes Simpson can become the franchise quarterback, then suddenly those future draft picks become available for something completely different. Instead of accumulating picks to pursue a quarterback in 2027, the Rams could now aggressively use those assets to pursue another Super Bowl while Stafford is still at the helm of the offense. And honestly, that sounds exactly like the Rams we've known under Sean McVay and Les Snead. This franchise has never been afraid to take risks when it believes the window to a title is open. We saw it during the Super Bowl run. We saw it when they built the team around Stafford. And now it seems that aggressive mentality may be returning in a very serious way. Now this is where things get really interesting. One of the names that has resurfaced in connection with the Rams is A.J. Brown. Yes, that conversation is back. And before some of you roll your eyes, listen carefully, because there are legitimate reasons for this idea to persist. Former Rams quarterback Jim Everett recently suggested that the team should revisit the discussion about A.J. Brown. And honestly, when you look at the current state of the offense, it's not hard to understand why. Imagine for a second what it would be like for A.J. Brown to receive passes from Matthew Stafford in Sean McVay's offense. That would be terrifying for opposing defenses. Even with all the production Brown has already had in Philadelphia, there's a belief that Stafford could reveal an even more dangerous version of him. The Rams' offense already revolves around creating disadvantages for the opposing defense and exploiting defensive weaknesses with timing, spacing, and precise passes. Adding a physical monster like A.J. Brown to that structure, alongside Puka Nacua and Davante Adams, would create nightmares every week. The defenses wouldn't know where to focus their efforts. Double Puka? Brown beats you. Focus on Brown? Stafford destroys you with Puka underneath. Play too aggressively? Stafford attacks deep. That trio would instantly become one of the most dangerous receiving groups in the NFL. And the scary part is, this wouldn't only be about 2026. One of the smartest points brought up in these discussions is the long-term effect this could have on Ty Simpson's development. If Stafford and Davante Adams eventually retire around the same time frame, the Rams would still need elite weapons in place for the next era of the offense. Pairing Ty Simpson with Puka Nacua and A.J. Brown for the future would give a young quarterback an incredible foundation to grow with. That's how dynasties stay competitive instead of collapsing after one era ends. But of course, there's a catch: the price. And this is where Rams fans are divided. The proposed cost discussed was a 2027 second-round pick and a 2027 fourth-round pick. On paper, that may not sound catastrophic. But once you really examine what that would leave the Rams with in that draft, things start looking uncomfortable very quickly. You'd suddenly be looking at a draft where the Rams would only have a first-round pick, then nothing significant again until much later. For a team that has rebuilt a huge portion of its roster through smart drafting and player development, that kind of hit to future flexibility is risky. And honestly, that's the real debate here. Not whether A.J. Brown is talented enough. Everyone knows he is. The real question is whether sacrificing that much future draft flexibility is worth it when the Rams already have a strong offense. Some fans will say, absolutely yes, because championships are rare, and Stafford's window won't stay open forever. Others will say no, because the Rams finally rebuilt their young core successfully after years of aggressive trades. And that's why this conversation is so fascinating. But A.J. Brown wasn't the only receiver mentioned as a possible target. Another extremely interesting name connected to discussions is Brian Thomas Jr. from Jacksonville. Now this one might actually make more sense for the Rams long-term. Brian Thomas Jr. had an outstanding rookie season in 2024, with 87 receptions, nearly 1,300 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. He looked like one of the most explosive young receivers in football, but questions have started emerging about Jacksonville's direction as a franchise, especially after organizational changes and inconsistent offensive usage. And that's where the Rams could potentially strike. The belief is that Brian Thomas Jr. might cost significantly less than A.J. Brown, maybe just a second-round pick instead of multiple premium assets. That changes the equation dramatically, because now you're talking about adding a young explosive receiver without completely destroying future draft flexibility. And from a football perspective, the fit is outstanding. Brian Thomas Jr. could immediately contribute as a dangerous third option behind Puka and Davante Adams, while simultaneously becoming part of the future core alongside Ty Simpson. That's exactly the type of balanced move the Rams usually love making, helping both the present and the future at the same time. What makes this even more interesting is how much confidence the organization appears to have in its current young foundation already. Jared Verse is expected to take another major leap. Byron Young is entering a huge contract year. Kobe Turner continues developing into one of the most important pieces on the defensive front. The Rams know this roster is getting stronger. That's why conversations about one more move suddenly feel realistic again. And when you combine that with Les Snead openly discussing using future picks to chase something special with Matthew Stafford, it absolutely feels like this front office is preparing for another aggressive push. The biggest question now is whether that move happens before the season starts or closer to the trade deadline when teams become more desperate. Because if the Rams start hot this season, you can almost guarantee they'll become one of the most aggressive buyers in football. And honestly, that should excite every Rams fan. This team already looks dangerous on paper. But if Sean McVay gets one more elite weapon added to this offense, the entire NFC could have a serious problem on its hands. So now I want to hear from you Rams fans. If the front office makes one major trade, who would you want most? A.J. Brown or Brian Thomas Jr.? And would you be willing to sacrifice future draft picks if it means giving Matthew Stafford one final championship push?